Guys, this podcast is brought to you by our friends at Wrestling Collector Shop. Make sure when you need to add new figures to your FigFed lineup, you head over to WrestlingCollectorShop.com.
Started by collectors for collectors around the globe, Wrestling Collector Shop has been serving fans the latest and greatest in wrestling action figures since 2002. Whether you're looking for basics, elites, or ultimates, Wrestling Collector Shop should be your first stop the next time you're looking for wrestling figures.
So make sure to go to WrestlingCollectorShop.com and use promo code Swoggle to save yourself 10% on your entire order. That's WrestlingCollectorShop.com. Use promo code Swoggle and save yourself 10% on the newest and greatest wrestling figures out there.
That's more than 9%. Welcome to the State of Affairs, our podcast, where each week we debate a different topic in pop culture, food, music, movies, and more. I'm Joe Shoes, the magistrate of Caravan City on Eternia.
I have no idea what the Caravan of Eternity is.
It's my character from the Masters of the Universe mini comic. I'm a character in the universe of the Masters of the Universe.
Before I was so rudely interrupted, as we often do on this show, as he does, I'm Dylan Postl. You know, the guy from Mad Cat Beard Care, the best smelling beard care products out there. Get the Swoggled scent right now. This is a debate podcast where each week, each host will take their turn at an argument on a topic given to us right before the debate happens. The opening arguments go on. Then the real debate begins. The goal is to do it with as little interruptions as possible, which, as we know, I sometimes have an issue with, but I'm going to hold my tone this week. Shoes, we had a hell of an episode last episode.
Very hotly contested. Or, you know what? Actually, it wasn't. You see, Dylan, the last episode. Yeah, go ahead. What do you have to say for yourself?
Guys, I'll admit, I'm a 38-year-old man. I can admit when I might have made a mistake. I still believe Velocity is an incredible pyro. I believe that I took too much of a chance. I took too much of a chance on that one, and it just didn't pan out the way I expected.
Well, you know, Dylan, it's like they say, there's no such thing as stupid ideas, just stupid people.
No, don't get into that already. No, don't get into that already.
According to the poll that we put up on X at AffairsPod, the winner by a score of 82% to 18%, qualifies as sheer decimation.
I wouldn't say that. That's 90-10. Sheer decimation is 90-10.
Oh, is that in the rule book? Did George write that down somewhere? 82 to 18. Yes.
82 to 18. I would
in
call
favor of Captain Joe Shoes. Now, I will say, as much as I bask in the glory of victory, I applaud you for actually doing something different for a change.
Oh, so, screw you.
I'm very happy. I just wish you would have stuck with it and didn't give up on your point so quickly. And I think that's where you lost it, because the people who did remember the Velocity intro said, you know what? Not for nothing. It is a pretty cool intro.
I couldn't do it. I was not happy with myself. And because of that, I was not happy with, I knew I took too much of a chance, and then it was putting roller skates on a pig. That's what it was. And I just did not like it. I'm not happy with it. I still believe I should have gotten more than 18%. But this week
I'm
is a
shocked
new
you
week.
got that much.
Oh, shut up. Before we move on to this week, though.
I will say one of the biggest pieces of feedback we got, and as with all of these things, it becomes generational, right? What did you grow up with? What pulls at you? For me, the amount of people who think Kane is number one, I and you're part of that. You're in that age. You're closer to that age than me. And I just look at it and Kane was never that guy for me. And as much as I love gimmicks and I love the stupid, funny, the worst of like WCW 2000 is my favorite rewatchable time in wrestling. But the supernatural stuff of Kane and I never got into. It's never been for me. So for me, that pyro was just like.
So I knew Kane's pyro is an obvious banger. I had it on my list, but to me, it wasn't a top three. I can't believe that you didn't think it was as iconic as it is.
I've never thought of
iconic
anything about the character. But once again, a lot of the comments too were when I was a kid, he legit terrified me. And for me, I was 16 when Kane debuted.
When you were a kid, pyro wasn't even invented.
When I was a kid, there was no such thing as most people didn't even have music. So, and you laugh. You're laughing, but it was not uncommon to not have music.
You're right. You're 100% right.
So it's just the perception, people are getting on me and I'm like, guys, the same reason that where you're pulling from nostalgia, my nostalgia is completely different than yours. When you're a child, even just a slight difference in age, think of if you have younger siblings. Like I have a younger brother who's a 3-year difference. What we liked and what the trends were at certain ages are completely different.
I think if there's an episode that's going to bring out nostalgia more than anyone, it's going to be this one. This episode is going to be the one where it's a fight for nostalgia. But
after 5 rounds of the state of affairs now, according to the polls that we've had on social media, the score is Dylan 2, Shoes 2, with 1 tie. The tie was for the movie episodes. It legit ended up a 50-50 split on social media. So we are at 2-2-1. This will hopefully break the tie going forward.
Guys, we make sure to find the polls on X. We're going to tweet them out on all of our socials, obviously, on X. Make sure to find them on Twitter and vote. Vote, vote, vote. We love your votes. It really adds another whole thing to this. I feel we're going to come up with a little bit of a wager of sorts, and maybe first 1 to 10 something happens or something like that. But it's going to be, your votes going forward are going to be very important. We're going to come up with something, and your votes are going to be important in this.
I'm terrified of where this can go because I feel like you have a little bit bigger of a fan base than me. You were in a couple of those WrestleMania things, and I feel like people
you say that, like but man, if they like me so much, you should have voted for Velocity.
There was even a guy who has voted for you on every single one who was like, man, I wish I could have, but Dylan, you were off your game this week. And that's a good reason to follow us on all social media at AffairsPod, Instagram, X, TikTok, all that stuff. Keep in touch with us. Of course, check out the Patreon at patreon.com/PodXchange for bonus episodes. We did the live social dinner ring last month. We'll be having another one this month. And of course, Dylan
hell of a watch along. Hell of a
watch along of Payback 2014 for Dylan's hair versus mask match with El Torito that both of us sat in on, and we spoke about it like real wrestling people.
You know what I will say? The questions and commentary that you had on that really surprised me, and I think the next one is going to be even better. I'm leaving it up to Shoes at what our next watch along is, as pertains to something in my career or something around the time I was there, or just anything. It could be Impact. It can be anything, but I'm leaving it up to Shoes. for the next watch along, and we're gonna have another really, really good time with that. That's all part of the Patreon. You can find that at patreon.com/PodXchange.
And guys, don't forget about Wrestling Collector Shop. Use code Swoggle to save 10%. And we had a giveaway for our last episode, Dylan. We gave away the Wrestling Collector Shop Major Bendy's exclusive Sergeant Slaughter G.I. Joe inspired figure. And that was won by @MarkIsShark on Instagram. So congratulations, Mark. Thank you for supporting. Thank you for listening. And this time around, Dylan, you know what we're giving out?
What do we? Oh,
Our
I know what this one
double
is.
main man, Dirty Dom.
Dirty Dom.
Dominic Mysterio, Elite 109 from Mattel, courtesy of Wrestling Collector Shop.
Matt Landon just added the Dirty Dom to his Fig Fed. He just added him to the Fig Fed. Guys, another part of the Patreon. Every month, you're going to get updates on Landon's Fig Fed, his setups, all of that. You're going to get a Landon joke. Where it's going to be just one of his shitty jokes once a month. And that make me very mad, but you guys will love because it makes me mad. But just another addition. But yeah, Landon added Dirty Dom to his Fig Fed. And I think Dirty Dom's record will be better than my record in his Fig Fed.
Well, you're not even in the Fig Fed. Didn't he not his last figure review?
He legitimately, the figure that's in this one, right here, the WLC one right there, is from his Fig Fed because I was used so little.
It's like you're on AEW. You just got sent to the details.
Just sitting there and having salt and pepper chicken with Smart Mark.
Guys, my favorite comment from the week was on YouTube from Smile Mark 4058. I love this because, like I said, it was a bloodbath. But Smile Mark said,
Not a bloodbath.
After watching, can we get Swoggle a tag team partner for the next battle? He clearly needs some help.
So
Smile Mark, you are my Shoonie of the week.
This is where I make my episodely comment of this is very Fox shoes of you. Very, very Fox shoes of you to pick that comment more than any when I have a very down the middle review. I have a very down the middle review about this whole show in general. And this is from Bowser the Third with the headline of Entertainment's Bar Has Risen. 5-star review. Thank you very much, Bowser. Been listening since day one. This podcast has caught lightning in a bottle. The conversations are so real and passionate that you can't help but think either Shoes or Captain.
I remember when I learned to read.
The conversations are so real and passionate that you can't help but think either Swoggle or Captain Shoes are winning. And that's the beauty of the state of affairs. They have gotten better every episode, and it's so easy to find an episode you'll like. If you don't relate to the topic at hand, either you'll have to listen or listen for the entertainment these two are providing. Thank you, Dylan. Thank you, Shoes. Bowser the Third. I know that's an awesome review. Guys,
thank you guys. That's
we
a great
love
review.
seeing your comments and your thoughts on the pod. We would love you to head over to iTunes and rate us. Give us a 5-star rating.
Leave us a kind we accept. We only accept
only
5
kind.
stars.
We only accept 5 stars. We're like the Rob Van Dam splashes. Only 5 stars. But
you know what's great?
Stuff like that makes all of this worth it. And it's
it really does. I love the interaction we're
happy.
getting, especially in the Discord. We get a lot of people. That's another perk of the Patreon. Hang out with us on Discord. But Dylan, that wasn't the only review we got on Apple Podcasts this week. This one is also 5 stars. And it is entitled, "Oh Captain, My Captain" from Joey Huds.
Oh, I know what's coming here.
And it says,
Fox Shoes again.
It says, Joe's arguments are so consistent and well laid out every time that a lot of people have started referring to him as the rhetorical Ripken. A lot of people are saying it. You're hearing it more and more these days. If you're looking for an enjoyable podcast, I suggest tuning into Joe and all the other hosts of State of Affairs. 5 stars, Joey Huds. What a review. And guys, that's a perfect free way to help support this podcast keep going by giving us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. So thank you, Bowser the Third. Thank you, Joey Huds, for that. Very factual podcast. Very factual, down-to-earth podcast reviews.
This son of a bitch makes it his goal every week to make my life hell. Every week. Whether it's this or social dinnering or something in the Discord or something on the Twitter.
He wasn't even in social dinnering. That was Jeff Montalvo. You're hating
He sucks too.
Maybe I was wrong about everybody liking you.
I didn't realize you had so many burner accounts. That's the issue. That's the issue at hand. You yellow-bellied asshole. I don't like you, and I don't like him, and I don't like Jeff. Guys,
Dylan, with all that being said, let's get into it.
Let's take a break.
Today's topic, before we take that break, topic.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to throw to a break. We got bills to pay.
He's got the break after we announce the topic and do an intro.
Well, we got bills to pay.
Well, we're not going to do it by not telling them what the episode's about.
As you saw in the title of the episode, guys, this is going to be a battle. 80s and 90s cartoons. The one rule is you got to have at least one. That and it's 5.
Yes,
Best
it is explicitly stated.
Cartoons.
5 picks each for today's episode. Explicitly stated in our directions from producer George. So best of the 80s and 90s cartoons.
Guys, this is going to be a battle for the ages. But before we get into it, ad read. And we're back. Guys, we are this episode because we've been doing it wrong. Because Shoes made the rules in the past. This episode, we're going to go.
Don't blame this on me. Legitimately, both of us are just so competitive that we don't want the other one stealing our top picks. So we've been starting from top to bottom. Yep. And this has translated over into real life where Dylan and I feel more competitive in group chats and regular text messaging to constantly insult each other more than needs to be done in a regular human being setting. But we're doing 5 picks each today, and we're going to do it correctly. We're going to start from the bottom up, work our way to the top. You agree with that?
I love it. Are we doing regular or are we doing snake draft?
Regular.
Great. So pop.
Okay. If we happen to overlap, we happen to overlap.
Great. And here's the thing. Since I essentially gave you the last victory, I will go first this week. I will lead off because
you don't want me to say yours,
and that is not why. Because
that's 100%
why. I guarantee you don't have any of mine. I guarantee you none of mine.
I think out of 5 picks, there has to be at least one that we have the same.
I guarantee you don't. Here we go. I would think so, ladies and gentlemen. My number 5 pick. It is a Super Mario Brothers cartoon, but it is not the Super Mario Brothers Super Show. It is Super Mario World. No, it is Super Mario World from 1991, where you had Yoshi. You had all your favorite characters in it. I loved this cartoon. You had all of Bowser's. Yeah, were they kids? Were they Bowser's kids or just minions of his? Like,
it's never really been explicitly.
Is this going to be? Is this going to be like dirty Dick Duck or whatever?
I don't think it's going to be as big as which. It was just Donald Duck's 90th birthday, so I put up a post.
I saw another thing about the Duck family tree.
I put up a post about my mom and I meeting Donald Duck. Happy birthday. I'm so glad that he took in those children as his own. I just wish we knew who Della Duck's sperm donor was.
Guys, this will be ranted on again on this podcast for sure. But Super Mario World, I feel it is a very not talked about cartoon especially because everyone talks about the Captain Lou Albano Super Mario Brothers Super Show cartoon. I didn't care for it. It was before my time, and if it wasn't, it was like when I was too young. I loved the Super Mario Brother or Super. I keep saying it. God dang it! I loved the Super Mario World game. That was probably growing up. That was my favorite Mario game. So then when they put the cartoon out for it, it was great. That is my number 5 pick coming out of 1991, Super Mario World.
Surprising pick. I thought you were going to go Super Mario 3 there.
That one's okay, but the Yoshi, man, I remember still. Nostalgia factor. Here we go. Nostalgia rules over everything. When we had the house fire, we then moved into the condo in Oshkosh when they were repairing our house. And I remember watching Super Mario World, and I remember like seeing Yoshi in cartoon form, and it was like, oh, this is the best, because Yoshi might be the best Mario character in the Mario world, in the Mario universe. I think he is. It's Yoshi and then Wario, which is me. That's essentially the 1 and 2. Yeah, that's my 5.
All right. My 5, we kind of mentioned it without mentioning it. I'm going to go with DuckTales.
I knew it. Just
DuckTales is one of those shows.
Shoes Drexler. DuckTales
just
for me. Going for layups.
Great cartoon entrance theme. Got you jazzed up. You knew what you were getting.
This isn't about entrance.
No, it's not. But there was something inherently fun about all the adventures here. Old, rich, miserly Scrooge McDuck. And I had really only known Scrooge from when they did like the Mickey's Christmas Carol, when that would pop up during the holidays. And he was always, evil and mean. And now here he is around all these kids and Mrs. Beakley and Webigail. And one of my favorite characters who I absolutely love to this day, Gizmo Duck. DuckTales gave us Gizmo Duck, and I loved it. I love whenever the Beagle Boys would try to break into the money bin. I thought the Beagle Boys were so entertaining. And when the movie came out, that was one of those movies I begged my mom, like, you gotta take me opening day, The Treasure of the Lost Lamp. I understand everybody hates it, but when Dylan says nostalgia rules all, you couldn't convince me at the time that was a bad movie. DuckTales, love it from start to finish. Every now and then I'll go back and revisit it. Even when they did the reboot semi-recently, I did check it out and I did enjoy it.
All right. Guess we're going for the easy ones. I mean, it's good. I am a Rescue Rangers guy over DuckTales. But I'll accept it. I really like Huey, Dewey, and Louie. And
thank you for accepting my opinion. Real sporting of you, champ.
You didn't accept mine. You said I should have picked. You said I should have picked Mario 3.
I didn't say you should have. I said that's what I was expecting. You swerved me, but you had your reasons. I appreciate that. You had a well thought out.
Putting DuckTales. I mean, yours isn't as well thought out as mine is. It's a pretty easy pick, but nonetheless, it's a pick. On to number 4. My number 4 pick. Staying in the 90s. I'm a 90s kid. Can we talk about that?
Sure. What do you want to talk about? I'm here for you, bro.
I consider myself a 90s kid because most of my upbringing is the 90s.
I would consider you a 90s kid. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So that's not born in the 90s.
So, I mean, that's going to be the argument, right? Because you're what, 86?
I'm 86.
But by the time you had any real memories,
I'm a young 86, obviously.
Let's not go crazy. But by the time you have the development to have real memories, it's 1990 at least.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. I'm a 90s kid. We're staying in the 90s. Tell me, if there was a cartoon crush of yours, you are not going to sit on that hill and lie and say it was not Patty Mayonnaise. You are not going to say it wasn't. Doug, the lessons Doug taught us about middle school, the lessons Doug taught us about going to high school, the lessons Doug taught us that when a cartoon goes to ABC, you stop watching. Doug, is my number 4 pick. Roger Klotz, Skeeter, Pork Chop. I love Doug. I love everything about Doug Funny. The only part I didn't care for about Doug were the Quail Man parts, but still, everything about Doug was incredible. Just incredible. It taught me how to get through middle school, taught me how to deal with a crush I had, and to not. Dylan Postl doesn't put up with bullying. Dylan Postl would not put up with Roger Klotz. Doug, number 4.
So you're going to throw Doug at me and not even mention Killer Tofu?
I said the beats. I mentioned the beats.
No, okay. I wasn't listening. Doug, no, I know a lot of people love it. It's after my time is really what it was.
Yeah, for years we should have done 70s and 80s cartoons.
No, not quite. You're a dick. I hope your feet stop working. Even more so.
You're not accepting Doug?
No,
not accepting Doug?
I think it's fine. I don't, for me, I can't have a strong opinion on it because I've watched it. It's fine. I get why kids, but once again, I have absolutely no memory, no nostalgia.
Man, this is going to be, go ahead. I got yours.
Number 4, Thundercats.
I knew it.
Oh!
I called it before we started.
Thundercats, sci-fi, fantasy, action, adventure, cool-looking mutants, cool-looking characters. We had robot bears who could help you build stuff. We had somewhat continuous storylines, which was very big for that day. We didn't have that kind of episodic programming because the 80s cartoons were so generated just to sell toys that the stories were usually pretty stupid. It's the villain's plot of the day, and then you get by it, but they introduce some kind of character or vehicle. That way you could go to the toy store in 3 months and go buy it. But Thundercats felt like it had a story that connected and weaved throughout the different episodes that they would reference back to. And that was something you can hold on to. And whereas I think a lot of the cartoons that I grew up loving as a child really don't hold up, I think Thundercats, a lot more than most, does hold up to this day. And it still has a lot of rewatch value for me. So Thundercats, the Rankin Bass series, I'm going to keep as my number 4 pick.
Never heard about it. Or I've heard of it, never seen it, heard of it, never seen an episode. I've never seen a trailer for it. I still to this day get it confused with He-Man at times. That's a real thing.
They were kind of the big two. Like when He-Man started fading out. So I look at these things like the trend as what I wanted for my birthday when I was a kid.
Okay.
So like when I was 4 years old, we had like a He-Man party. So when I was 5 years old, we had a Thundercats party. So as He-Man kind of faded away, Thundercats came in. And then the next year, Thundercats kind of faded away and the next thing became a thing. And then, and that's kind of the way I remember these things is what was popular. What did I want on my birthday cake that year?
Just so you know, while you were doing your spiel about Thundercats, and you didn't mention Garfield or Heathcliff or Felix in it, so I don't know why you didn't even mention them. Obviously, they must be starring characters in it. But I wrote down my guesses.
If you're going to talk about cartoon crushes, what about that cat from Heathcliff?
I don't know. I've never watched Heathcliff.
Then why the fuck are you even bringing them up, dickhead?
They're cartoon cats.
Yeah.
Garfield. Who was Velma? Nope. Velma was different. Velma was
a hip lady.
Oh no, I'm talking. What was the cat on Garfield? The female cat.
I don't know.
I can't think. But just as I was saying, I wrote down my picks for your top 3, and I almost positive I have all 3.
I'm going to guess that you have one of them.
Okay.
One. I think you have one.
Here we go. My number 3 pick. It could have been my number 2, but my number 3 pick. So my number 5, Super Mario World. My number 4, Doug. Let's follow it up with, if not one of the biggest 80s cartoons in history. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. The single reason we have the toys, the single reason we have the movies, the single reason the turtle craze began. Now you tell me that you don't believe that that is a number 1 or 2 pick. And no, I say nay, not to me. To most, that's probably a number 1. Me, it's a number 3. You are not going to beat that pick. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Why I believe the biggest 80s toy of all time. I truly believe that. You're going to say He-Man or G.I. Joe?
He-Man was big. G.I. Joe may have been at the end of the day because G.I. Joe hung around for a lot longer than people remember. But Ninja Turtles the toy line hung around a lot longer than people remember too.
It's still here.
But I'm saying the original Playmates toy line
it's
hung
so
around
long.
Way longer than people remember.
Truly because of the cartoon. That's the crazy part.
Well, obviously, yeah.
It usually was the other way. You know, like it's just crazy that they had no plans for it. It's TMNT, the Ninja Turtles cartoon, the original. You had Uncle. I was gonna say Uncle Fester, but that's Adam's family. Fresh Prince Uncle.
Uncle Phil.
Uncle Phil. You had Uncle Phil voicing Shredder. Yeah, and just man.
Did that fuck you up when you found that out finally as an adult?
Yeah, big time.
That was one of those like, no.
Time. Yeah, a lot. Real a lot. I don't have to go any farther. I don't got to go into detail about why I love it because it's for the same reasons that all of you love it. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, my number 3 pick. Shoes, good luck with this round.
So I know you're gonna win like everyone's gonna side with you. I hate, but I'm gonna push back on it. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles sucks. At the time when you're a kid, this is one of those things where I say this is where we lean too heavily on nostalgia. If you go back and watch that series now,
Thundercats is so great.
It's much better than Ninja Turtles. Yes, Ninja Turtles is absolutely brutal to have to endure a rewatch of now. Absolutely.
They all are.
But some are better than others, and Ninja Turtles is fucking atrocious. Once you get past the episode where Baxter Stockman gets turned into a fly, everything is just absolute horseshit.
And the punk rock episode, all of that. The whole series is so good.
Now, back when I was a kid, it wasn't my number 1 thing. I was getting on the cusp of kind of aging out of cartoons at that point. I was more interested in playing baseball, but it was still very big in my house because I had a younger brother who that's like one of his top things of all time. So I was definitely watching it. I knew what was going on. We had the toys in the house. The sewer play set I thought was amazing. The blimp, when I got that blimp toy in my house, my brother got it for Christmas that year, whatever it was. I was just like, the toys are awesome. I completely get why that nostalgia pull is on Ninja Turtles. But I will say, if you're just judging on the cartoon alone, like we are, and you go back and try watching that today, you will want to gouge out your eyes with a spork.
You're nuts. You just go ahead.
And that's why it pales in comparison to my number 3 pick. G.I. Joe, a real American hero. And
it's
Dylan,
on my list for you.
This is the one that I said you probably have on your list for me. G.I. Joe, real American hero, fighting the forces of Cobra. We had an incredible cast of characters. Now, I should state, there is 2 different G.I. Joe series that happened around the time. There's the original Sunbow series, and as soon as that kind of phased out, they went to a different series made by Deke, which sucks.
I remember Deke. I remember the Deke one.
Yeah.
Because I always laughed at it. I always laughed at it as a kid because it said Dick. I always loved it as a kid when it came up because it said Dick. Which I believe did the Turtles. I believe they did the Turtles cartoon too.
They might have. They were involved in a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
The reason I know, because the 2 G.I. Joe series have such a dramatic difference between them. The animation is much cheaper, and in the Deke series, the stories are worse. We had this incredible cast of characters. We had some really cool stories. We had some great like multi-part episodes and stuff. I love multi-part episodes where it's let's build Serpentor out of the DNA of the worst humans that ever existed. So we're going to track down a piece of Genghis Khan. Yeah, you think I'm joking. I see your face.
What the fuck is a Serpentor?
Serpentor was the guy who succeeded Cobra Commander as the head of Cobra. Eventually, everyone from Cobra gets together and says, Cobra Commander.
Karate dojo?
I hate you so fucking much. And you do this on the 40th anniversary of The Karate Kid, which is one of my favorite childhood movies. And you're going to fucking do this there are times it's so difficult to be your fucking friend sometimes. I swear to fucking God.
Go ahead, though.
Serpentor becomes the new leader of Cobra because everybody's pissed off that Cobra Commander keeps failing in an attempt to beat G.I. Joe. So they go and find the DNA of the greatest rulers of all time to try to generate a new leader, Serpentor. And Dr. Mindbender puts him together in a lab. And the last bit, because one of the vials gets broken, they take a piece of Sergeant Slaughter and put piece of Sergeant Slaughter in.
I know who he is.
You've heard of him, yes. So these mini multi-part episodes, I love those. And G.I. Joe gave us a bunch of those. Really great. Toy line, obviously awesome. But the music, the cartoons, the stories, the characters, G.I. Joe to this day, I find very rewatchable. It's one of my like kind of comfort foods. You know, like when you go to bed and you want to have something on, but you don't want to put anything new on because you don't want to be mentally invested and you want to fall asleep. G.I. Joe is one of those things where I could just peacefully put on, let play, and just kind of drift off into a state of happiness and slumber.
It's a hell of a pick. I will give you that. It's a hell of a pick. The only thing, because I'm not one to tear you down and your picks down, the only thing I will say about it, I feel that your pick is heavily based on the toys, not so much the cartoon, but it's a good pick, Joe.
I actually disagree with you. It's very much about the TV show itself. I mean, that's the reason we want the toys in the first place, right? Like you said, with the Ninja Turtles, it's the show is what kicks off.
I think the show was so big and so great that the demand was for the toys. G.I. Joe, I don't think so.
But that's with anything. With the reason He-Man toys, because He-Man was the first one. I don't know if you know this, but He-Man, the toys actually came out before the show. And it was once this animation house called Filmation was brought in to do a commercial for the toys, they said, hey, we can make a pretty good series out of this. And they did it for syndication to market to children after they got home from school. And they used it basically as a 30-minute ad to sell toys. And that was kind of the roadmap the rest of these 80s cartoons followed after that. Was you need the show to be able to sell the toys. And Thundercats did the same thing, and G.I. Joe did the same thing, and Silverhawks did the same thing. Ninja Turtles did the same thing. They created this TV show to be able to sell the toys. And Playmates, who did the Ninja Turtles figures, was actually the only ones that picked up on it because no one saw the value in a bunch of cartoon turtles.
I agree.
From an adult-themed comic book. If you read the original Ninja Turtles book, it's kind of vicious. Doesn't Shredder die in like an early version, like an early issue of it? Yeah, it's the same thing with the G.I. Joe comics too. The G.I. Joe comics, it's very long series comics too. Yeah, absolutely. They were written by a guy named Larry Hama, and he was an ex-military vet, and he wrote it. And now, don't get me wrong, it's still a cartoon. It's still a comic book, but he looked at it from the perspective of this is war. There has to be stakes. So as a kid, I didn't like the comics because it was just so drastically different from the cartoon. But as an adult, I appreciate it very, very much now.
Decent pick. I'll give you that. That'll be the toughest round easily so far. Easily, that'll be the toughest.
Depends when you grew up. That's what it comes down to.
Just stab myself in the wrist.
How?
I was fidgeting.
Does this normally happen?
Yeah. I stabbed myself with a plastic hanger one week with George because I was just playing with it. It broke and it stabbed me. This week was a mechanical pencil.
Holy shit.
Guys, we're going to number 2, round 2. Going back to the 90s.
Well, round 4, kind of.
Round 4, pick number 2. Round 4, pick number 2. I'm going back to the 90s. Man, this might be... I can't say it's my favorite because otherwise it'd be number 1. This is like a 1.5 favorite cartoon for me. Going to the 90s. I'm going Rugrats. I love Rugrats. It was a show, and I was a little older. Not older, but I was a little older, like, for it, but I loved it. It was funny, and they always did like the double episodes. Like one episode, it was always like 2 episodes per 30 minutes or whatever. One was always like just based on Tommy, as I remember it, and then other was based on the whole gang. I loved Rugrats. It just was fun to me how they went on these adventures and they just how they break out of the baby gate and the grandpa and all of that. I just loved it. I absolutely loved Rugrats until the movie came out. And then it was, as Newfound Glory says, all downhill from there. Rugrats is easily my number 2 pick. I think Rugrats, if you ask me, Rugrats led the way for Nicktoons. Rugrats really started the Nicktoons craze. People are going to say Ren and Stimpy. Now, while Ren and Stimpy is a Nickelodeon cartoon, it wasn't meant for kids, obviously. It's like calling Beavis and Butthead a cartoon. Before we started recording, Shoes and I were talking about that. I don't consider in this argument, I don't consider a Simpsons a cartoon or a South Park.
Family Guy.
These are like
adult primetime cartoons. Doesn't really fit the mold of what we were going for here.
Rugrats really kicked off the Nicktoons era, and how big. I mean, think about how big. I was talking about Doug, and how big the Nicktoons were. I truly feel Rugrats started it all. My number 2 pick, Rugrats.
So I got nothing bad to say about Rugrats. In fact, it was something I even thought about putting on my list.
I had a feeling it before we started. I was like, I bet Shoes really does enjoy Rugrats.
I do enjoy Rugrats. Back in high school, I dated a girl who was like obsessed with it. So I used to watch it all the time. And I was a big Reptar guy, like Reptar, when they would go see like Reptar on Ice, like that was
my good pals at Super 7 sent me the giant Reptar. It's in my basement and it's in a loving home. I was very, very happy with that.
I thought it was very, very cool for the time to see the way these babies would always break out of the gate, like, and do so where it was just like commonplace, like wait for the adults to fall asleep and just be like, look at these maroons. It was almost like a Bugs Bunny cartoon updated with babies, where they would just look at all the adults around them like they were the idiots. And I appreciated that.
Yeah. The Tommy, whenever they did the Tommy like episode or half episode, it was always, a lot of it was shot from his perspective, which I always thought was kind of cool too. So it was just different. I really, really liked it.
And what I do appreciate, especially thinking about it now, the way they wrote Angelica is she's like a genuine heel.
She's just a bitch.
Right?
Like just a bitch. Like, but she's a child. She's like, so let's say Tommy and them.
Like there's nothing outwardly unchildlike about her. She's just a spoiled child. And she's like, oh,
just an asshole. Yeah. And like, she wasn't like a teenager. She was 6, 5 maybe? Or 6. Yeah. Just man, the writing for her was great. So good. I'm gonna go to bat for number 2. That's I know it's coming. It's gonna be a hard battle. Go ahead.
Now, Dylan, I don't think you have any idea what you're about to get into.
Okay.
My number 2 is a 90s cartoon. And it's something that I don't think was really appreciated in its time. I think it went over the heads of the target audience a lot.
Is this your Roy Rogers? Is this your Roy?
No, I don't think it is. I don't think it's that far outside the box where I'm really regionalizing myself. But even at the time, it was a very different tone of cartoon than we were really used to. And you're going to see that with my number 1 as well. But my number 2 pick is called Gargoyles.
Oh, okay.
And Gargoyles had a very more adult, it wasn't an adult cartoon, but it just had a more mature theme to it.
Yeah.
And I think at the time, that kind of went over the heads of the target child audience. But, you know,
almost like Darkwing Duck.
What's that?
I feel like Darkwing Duck was almost like written and shot the same way. Where Darkwing Duck wasn't like DuckTales. It wasn't meant for that
No,
age.
It wasn't meant to be. You know, and Darkwing Duck, like originally, like Gosselin is, what is her parents die or something? And he, Drake Mallard adopts her. So it's like some heavy shit right at the beginning of that show. Gargoyles 2 is like some very real like themes going on, and watching it back now, especially because it's on Disney Plus and we have access to all this cool stuff that we never had access to for years. Watching it back now, I really, really like Gargoyles. So even when, not that I was a super huge Gargoyles fan as a kid, I definitely wasn't. I watched it, I was interested in it, but I didn't really give it the appreciation it deserved at the time. And I think now, if you go back and check it out, there's a reason you have NECA making those amazing Gargoyles figures now.
They're
enormous. They're so detailed. They're so beautiful. I've never bought one. I've had them in my hands at multiple times.
Are they heavy?
Like, they're big, dude. They're big.
Man, I was never a Gargoyles guy, but I understood it. Man, I remember they had either BK or McDonald's kids meals toys. I remember that. They had a hell of a following. That was also, if I remember right, Shoes, was that during like that ABC Saturday morning cartoons where it was like the Mighty Ducks cartoons and that, or was it before that?
For some reason, I'm picturing it as like a Fox after school cartoon.
You're right. I think you're right, because they did Fox Kids.
That's where I'm kind of picturing. I'm kind of picturing it in a block with like X-Men animated series, you know, kind of in that same realm. Now, I could very well be wrong. Man. I could be misremembering it. Maybe I'm not as correct as I think I am, but that's the way I remember it. It was a little bit too mature for, I think, the kids they were going for at the time. But
I feel like the years later, the nostalgia of it is a bigger audience than the at that time audience.
Yeah.
Shoot. That's going to be a battle. Man, those 2 rounds, I knew were going to be battles. I didn't expect that big of battles. Crap.
You didn't have that on your I know what Shoes is going to pick list, did you?
You got me on that one. All right. My
now,
number 5 pick.
This is where I'm scared.
This is it.
I want you to know. This is where I'm scared, because while I think there's an outside chance we have the same one.
No, you know it. You know mine. 1,000,000% you know mine.
Oh, okay. Then we're different then.
1,000,000% you know mine. Number 5 was Super Mario World. Number 4.
We'll recap it again. Give us number 1, you asshole. Don't make us wait.
There is not a better childhood, learning, all around good time, enjoyable cartoon than the Muppet Babies. Ladies and gentlemen, the Muppet Babies. If you are a kid of the 80s, if you're a kid of the 90s, I would bet that your memory of the Muppets is the Muppet Babies. I got introduced to the Muppets because of Muppet Babies. The way they introduced these characters and all their different characteristics, everything. And then they kept introducing characters like Bunsen and Beaker. Then they introduced Bean Bunny towards the end. Statler and Waldorf were in the Muppet Babies. They introduced all of these characters that you saw on the Muppet Show and on Muppets Tonight, and that they introduced them in the Muppet Babies cartoon. And what was cool to me, the reason it can't be shown on any streaming service is because they did the movie shots and the TV shots integrated into the show. They'd open a closet and there's a giant ball from Indiana Jones coming at them, which was the theme of that episode. Or they had a Star Wars episode where they had the lightsaber duels and the TIE fighters in the closet or outside the window. And then they had the Blob episode, which legitimately scared me because I didn't like it. It was dark and I didn't like things in the dark. I don't like it. But man, the Muppet Babies cartoon, I say it all the time, is what got me into the Muppets and what grew my love for the Muppets. I'm like getting like a goosebump feel thinking of it, because it truly is. It truly is a very nostalgic and just a heartwarming memory of watching the cartoon. Number one cartoon of all time, of the 80s and 90s, Muppet Babies.
So Muppet Babies is something that very easily could have made my list as well. Yes. I genuinely love the Muppet Babies. And you said it perfectly when you said you feel like this is how a lot of people of that generation were even introduced to the Muppets.
Yep.
And that's, for me, was 100% how I was introduced to the Muppets. There was just something very wholesome, very fun, very lighthearted. Yes. Like, the fact is, all these kids hanging out and just having dreams and fantasies and trying to, when I'm an adult, I'm going to be a newspaper man. Kermit's writing for the Daily Muppet and they all work for the newspaper in an episode. When Scooter builds a robot named Transgo Joe-Bot. Transgo Joe-Bot is on the way and programmed to save there's something about that. And especially when you think the adults aren't looking, like you're getting away with something. And then Nanny would show up and they go back to being regular kids, and like, kind of like the toys when Andy walks in, they all fall down and like, oh no, we're just toys.
Love it.
There's something about that you can relate to, where it's
every episode had a focus on one of the characters. Everyone, from Beaker being afraid of the dark to the episodes of Gonzo just being the outcast, to Animal just being too wild, Skeeter, who would never be in another Muppets production besides the comic book and besides merchandise. Skeeter would never be seen again, which still boggles my mind with how they didn't, like, in a Muppets Most Wanted, just have her like, oh hey, I am here, like, or like a call back.
It's
like,
got to be a rights issue, like with the episode.
Yeah,
but even now, like, I don't understand the Muppet Babies rights, because now I don't understand. I don't know all the movie clips in them, but if Disney owns the Muppets and Star Wars, there's so many. I know,
things.
So I don't know what's what.
That's why they can't do it, and that's what really sucks. The only way you can watch it is on YouTube, and it's like such bad quality. I wish there was better quality of these episodes. I watch them all the time throughout the year, and it's just, man, it's such a fun, wholesome, learning cartoon of like all these characters having, like I said, having their own characteristics and not being outcasts from this group. They're all in one collective group. They make a pool in the pool episode in the nursery. God dang, I am like remembering this like it was yesterday. Whoo! I love it. Love it.
Yeah, and one of the big things, like, you were saying before about McDonald's Happy Meal toys. Those Muppet Baby toys are some of the most iconic ones from my childhood. When I would get those, Gonzo on the little tricycle, amazing.
Tricycle. Fozzie had the pommel horse. It's called, right? Pommel horse?
Yeah. Well, the rocking horse.
Yep, rocking horse.
The pommel horse is the thing they do gymnastics on in the Olympics.
Yes, you're right. You're more right than I am. Piggy had the wagon, or Kermit had the wagon?
Ooh. I think Piggy had the wagon.
But then they did the Christmas plushes. My most sought after item. I still do not have them in my collection because I can't find them for a decent price in bag. The most sought item on my like Muppet collection bucket list are those plushes. that came from McDonald's, man, you ain't getting better. You ain't getting better than it. I can't argue yours because I don't know what it is yet, obviously. But it's going to be hard for me to argue, like,
because you know what this means to you.
It's just the fucking Muppet Babies. Like, very simple. Like, nothing's beating it. It's just the Muppet. So yeah, man, I cannot. You can't beat the Muppet Babies in my mind, in my world.
So the way you talk about the Muppet Babies is how I talk about He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. The unfortunate part is I've been able to separate myself from the nostalgia.
I can't. You're more of a man than me.
The thing is, it doesn't change the fact that I love He-Man. It doesn't change the way it made me feel as a kid. It doesn't change the way my dad would come home from work and lay on the floor and play with the action figures with me. I remember that stuff vividly, and nothing about how I feel about the show now is going to impact those memories. And it's the same thing I say whenever I, say like you have to break from nostalgia. If you take yourself out of it for a second, it's still not going to go back and change those memories. It's not going to change. It's not going to change the way it made you feel as a child. But you have to be able to say at some point, you know what? As much as I love this, it's really not very good. And that's how I feel about the original Filmation He-Man series now.
Wow.
I can still watch it, but at the same time, I'm watching it going, I guess for the time it was great. My number one pick,
that shocks me.
My number one pick was an early 90s show that I feel absolutely changed the game. And it's one of the first shows I can remember watching when I came home from school and like actively knowing like this is different. This is more than what I'm used to seeing in a cartoon series. So my number one animated series of all time is called Batman, the Animated Series. The noirish tone of the show combined with these interpretations of the villains. Now, I had grown up watching the 1966 Batman series. It was very goofy, very playful, very campy. I enjoyed that. And that's what I thought I was originally getting with Batman, the Animated Series. And it was a complete 180 in tone and tenor from that Batman. And it works on so many levels. The storytelling, the colors, the way they interpreted Gotham City as almost as its own character is just an incredible credit to everyone who was involved in that series. And I think if you watch that now, Batman the Animated Series not only holds up, but you look at it and you say, this was the inspiration for almost everything that came after it. This is the one that absolutely changed the game and the way we thought about the way cartoons should be or could be. We're not looking at children as just the lowest common denominator anymore that didn't know how to think and just want to buy toys. Children can be invested. They can comprehend. They can understand complexities. And that's Batman the Animated Series is the first one I felt like actually looked at a child as a reasonable person and said, here's a story for you. And that's why I think that is my number one all-time animated series.
I have a question for you.
I have an answer for you.
What life lessons did Batman teach you?
Don't kill people.
Son of a bitch! Son of a bitch!
Don't get any better than that. Walked your
Damn
shit
it!
for that one, Postl.
I did. All right, let's go over our list. Yeah. All right.
Go ahead.
My list. Number 5, Super Mario World. Number 4, Doug. Number 3, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Number 2, Rugrats. And my number 1 cartoon of all time, Muppet Babies.
Okay, and I had at number 5, DuckTales. At number 4, Thundercats. Number 3, G.I. Joe, the Sunbow series. Number 2, Gargoyles. And number 1, Batman, the animated series, which is still big time business today. McFarlane's doing Batman, the animated series figures as we speak.
I think like Gargoyles. I think like Gargoyles, it's hotter now than it was when it came out. I really do.
It might be, yeah, legitimately.
I think the following is so big now.
We live in this incredible time right now where when we were kids, once these shows went away, they went away forever.
We didn't have the money for the shit then. We have the money to buy the stuff now.
But not only that, like there was no He-Man VHS compilation. You know what I mean? It wasn't until DVD came in that we were getting these full compendiums of these old shows.
Makes
these
me
old
want
series.
the Muppet Babies series so much.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I was one of those guys who, when DVDs became a big thing, every Tuesday I was at Best Buy to see like what was new.
I would land coming home from Raw. I would go to Best Buy, and I would just everyone from the rack pop, 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 pop. And it's such like looking at it now is such a waste of money. You know, 20, $100 a week.
We didn't know we were going to have digital and streaming. Like the idea that you could have Netflix streaming in your house when that first started over a decade ago now, like they didn't even have a lot on streaming, but we all watched that King of Kong documentary on Netflix about the guy trying to beat the world record of Donkey Kong. Because it was one of the few options that was available to stream, so everybody watched the same movie.
I remember Chappelle's show was early. I'm pretty sure too. Like it's just
when we started getting on demand on our cable networks, like that, like welcome to the fucking future, boys. You know, and now we live in this time where realistically we have all of this stuff at our fingertips, and it's allowed us in certain cases to be able to go back and evaluate them with a more clearer head instead of just having to rely on our nostalgia. Because if I never got to rewatch Masters of the Universe, to me, I'd be like, what the fuck are you talking about? It's the greatest show fucking ever.
Damn, you had a good list too. You know what is different about this? I thought this was going to be very argumentative, very anger-filled, but this, I think it was so nostalgia-filled that we didn't get as mad as usual, which is okay.
Let me ask you this. If you had to pick the least favorite on my list, what would you pick?
Like the one I hate?
Yeah, your least favorite out of my 5.
Thundercats. So stupid. So stupid.
So good.
So dumb. Yours is Doug?
Mine would probably be Doug, yeah.
Yeah.
Because even when I watched it, like...
Loved it. But you were old. If it was like Doug the college years, you would have loved it.
It just wasn't for me. You know, that's...
I loved it, man.
Rugrats, Muppet Babies, I have especially fond memories of.
Muppet Babies gave Dave Coulier and Howie Mandel their start. I'm going to say it. That was what kicked them off. Guys.
I just want to say one show that I feel like doesn't get enough love. And I thought about putting it on my list, but the way these debates have gone, I was worried it was going to be my Roy Rogers again, where everyone just comes from my fucking head. Alvin and the Chipmunks. The Alvin and the Chipmunks cartoon from the 80s is one of those things where I hold it, for me, it has a lot of the same kind of feelings that Muppet Babies brings out in me. It's just, I picture myself in my kitchen watching. I was actually the Alvin in my family. There's going to come a time where I just like show up at your house and I knock on your door and I say, Landon, go get your father, please.
If the PodXchange family was Alvin and the Chipmunks, George would be Simon.
Dave. No, George is Dave.
No, Caruso's Dave.
No, because Dave is constantly trying to keep everything together, and he just can't do it. That's George. Caruso Simon, because he's doing all the tech stuff.
I might accept.
You're Theodore, though.
I might accept Theodore.
You're Theodore for sure.
Yeah. So you had that as your 5A. My 5A was Garfield and Friends. And I didn't want to take the risk on it, man.
So here's my issue with Garfield. I'm not a big Garfield guy to begin with.
I only was for Garfield and Friends.
But this is the thing. It's Garfield and Friends, but you look forward to the Friends way more than Garfield.
Oh, really? I loved the Garfield cartoons. I didn't like the farm ones as much. What was it? Farm Follies? What was it?
Something like that.
Yeah. That was my 5A.
It was pretty big for a while. That had a run for a bit. Yeah. Garfield and Friends for sure.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of State of Affairs. Make sure to follow us on all forms of social so you can let us know your thoughts on who won, who lost, and your favorite 80s and 90s cartoons. At Affairs Pod on all forms of social. X, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, everything. Follow us on all forms of social media.
We'll also have that giveaway for the Dominic Mysterio Elite 109, courtesy of Wrestling Collector Shop. You don't know which format it's going to be on, so you want to be following across all of that. Guys, this show's been awesome doing it the past couple of months with Dylan. This was I feel like we almost got a little sappy here, which I wasn't expecting, right?
I thought it was going to be a battle.
Wait, how do you argue? Like, I can't tell you you're a fucking idiot. Like,
you can't argue nostalgia.
I can't tell you your childhood sucked. Like that. What kind of human being would that make me?
But guys, make sure to subscribe, rate, review on Apple Pod, on Spotify, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. And if you'd like to advertise your product or service or brand on this, please reach out to affairspod@gmail.com. You can check out all of my socials at Dylan Postl, my Pro Wrestling Tees store, prowrestlingtees.com/swoggle. YouTube, where you're watching this, youtube.com/Dylan Postl. That's enough of my plugs. Joe, finish her off.
At the Joe Shoes all across social media, prowrestlingtees.com/Joe Shoes or youtube.com/Joe Shoes. Guys, take a look at that Patreon, patreon.com/PodXchange. We've announced some stuff. You've been getting some stuff. There will be more stuff. So if you've been on the fence about joining and checking it out, give it a little taste. Maybe dip your toe in the water, see how you like it, come back. If you got suggestions, we're always willing to listen. But we do have some other things planned to add to the existing tiers. If you maybe don't think you're getting enough value right now between the 3 shows of the State of Affairs, Going Postl, and of course our sister show, the Game Marks Podcast, hosted by our producer George and
Carus.
Thank you very much. So guys, this has been round 6 of the State of Affairs, and that's amore, cowboy.
That's love, cowboy.